LCARA Ham Radio presents a Time Machine Tuesday vintage video release.
That's right. This week on LCARA Ham Radio, we've got a special treat for you. Stick around for the entire show. Dr. Bob Heil, K9EID, this week on LCARA Ham Radio. All righty. Well, good evening to everybody that's on our Hands-On with LCARA presentation tonight. And looks like we've got a pretty good crowd here. We're still expecting a few more. And I'm just jazzed to have this particular individual for our presentation. Chris Perry, my brother, KY4CKP, really did all the outreach and so forth to get Dr. Heil here with us tonight. But he had an engagement that he had to take care of, a personal family business, and was unable to attend tonight, but he would have been here. So being that I was going to help him and co-host, that is what I'm doing today. So let me admit one more of our members. Dr. Heil has a very storied past and history. He may go into some of that here during the presentation. And we're also going to ask him to talk a little bit about the technologies and products that he's helped create and put out there for ham operators like ourselves, whether it's headsets or possibly other devices. And that is what we're going to look at here. K9, Echo India Delta, is our guest speaker tonight.
Okie dokie, all ready to go?
Yes, sir. We are ready for you. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the invite. I love spending time with clubs. I used to do it years back in person, but this COVID thing kind of stopped some of that. And then we started doing these Zoom things, and we're finding out I can do them better here than I can live because I got all my toys and things to help me explain some of this great hobby. I'm going to take a few minutes with you to tell you where I came from. And a lot of you are going to say, well, now, what has this got to do with ham radio? And it has everything to do. At the age of 12, my parents bought me a Hammond organ, a B3. And I'd been playing accordion for a couple of years, but I started playing, teaching myself by listening to records, you know, those big vinyl things that had a hole in the middle, and some of the great theater organists of the country. 2 years later, I was 14. I got a job in a restaurant playing and making a lot of money. And I'm going, this is what I want to do. Another year passed, and in 1956, I became the organist at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. Stan Can was the organist there, and he hired me to play substitute for him. And this is why I talk to you about this and tell you, this is where we had to voice and tune over 3,500 pipes from 1 inch to 32 foot. And it's where I learned to listen. You see, hearing is a physical process. Listening is a mental process, dissecting all of the nuances, all of the distortions. And a lot of people do not listen. They just hear. And it's so important as we get on through the night about hearing and listening. Listening is where it's at. Well, also later that year, I became a ham. And I went to Walter Ash and I bought a TBS 50D Harvey Wells transmitter, SX99. And that big box over there, that's an RME converter. It's 6 meters, 2 meters, and 220. I was a technician for 17 years. And you're going to say, why? Well, the reason was the bands were open all the time. Nothing like today. 6 meters it was just full 24/7. There's always something there. And today it's not usable. It really isn't. It's become a contest band. What's your grid square? See, wait a minute. I don't have a grid square. I do, but I'm not going to talk. Oh, nobody wants to have a conversation anymore on 6 meters. They just want your grid square. They're up on FTA. 20 meters, what to me was my 6 meters. And I was there all these years. You see that blue box on the left with the little meter in it. I had been on the air about 3 weeks, and I had read this article in QST. And I went over to Walter Ash again, and I got all the parts. They helped me to put that together, and I built it, and it worked. Wow, that was cool. And I just really love building. Well, something happened right after that, and the Fox Theater called me and said, "Hey, we're throwing out some of our old speaker systems. They've been here since 1932. And would you like to have them?" Well, yeah, Ham doesn't throw anything away. And so those speakers on the right, those are 16-foot Olsen bins. They were synonymous with motion picture theaters in the 30s and 40s. And the two on the left, I bought those from another theater, and those are A4 Altex. And I put together a sound system. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I was building a bunch of things. It was just a hobby for me. But the next thing you know, we had built a multi-kilowatt sound systems, 3 or 4 of them. And we were doing people all over the country, if not the world. Great groups that you've learned to know and love and so on. And there they were. I was their sound engineer for about 14 years. And they become very good personal friends of mine. Joe Walsh, WDB6ACU, Peter Frampton, Pete Townsend, so on and so forth. And of course, the Grateful Dead were such good friends. And you would think, wait a minute, because you're looking at a guy that has never tasted beer or anything, never has smoked anything, and for gosh sakes, never did any drugs. But I enjoyed being with these people. They needed help, and I could help them. Jerry Garcia, after we did the first tour with them, he would come to Marissa and just talk to me. He just learned things, so he said. But then my life changed real fast. I got a call from Paul Klipsch. Paul Klipsch is the father of the hi-fi world. He's the father of the folded horn. He was an amazing guy, and I couldn't believe he was calling me. And he wanted to come and see those kilowatt systems because the biggest system we had was 8,000 watts. And this is, I didn't know it, but I bought a bunch of Macintosh amplifiers, and we had all these great speakers, and put JBL drivers in them. And the next thing you know, we were talk of the industry for many years. Well, Paul came to see me. He flew his little air coupe up to Marissa. Marissa, Illinois was my home then, about 50 miles southeast of St. Louis. And it was all day. Like, he was much taller than I. Why did you do that? What made you do? How did you learn to do that? What college? I didn't go to college. Wait, no, you didn't go to college. How did you learn this? Ham radio. No, I mean, where did you learn how to ham radio? That happened to me probably hundreds of times in my many, many years out. People wanted to know, how did you learn to do this? I did it because of ham radio. That's where I learned to build. And listening. Remember that, listening. Paul put me in his airplane, and we went down to Hope, Arkansas. It was his home. Spent a few days down there, the most gracious, rich days in my life, because he taught me things. And he didn't do it right at the minute, but I'm writing down notes like crazy. And I do hope that some of you will do the same, because you're going to hear a lot of things tonight that really mean something. He's standing in front of his K horn, as he called it, That one he built in plexiglass just to show people all of the different angles. It starts out as a 15-inch speaker, and then all of the angles make it come out to a corner and all exponential. And what's neat about it is it fits in the corner of your room. And so when it's in the corner of the room, there's an 8-foot wall this side and there's an 8-foot this way. They're the last of the 16-foot horns, which made it 32 foot. The thing could do 15 cycles like nothing. And you didn't hear a K horn. If you ever get a chance to hear one, you didn't hear it. You're going to experience it. It is totally amazing. And so we went on through many different things the next few days. That building you see is an old telephone exchange building. And that was his laboratory and where he did all of his work and studies and so on. I was so blessed to be able to meet him and think about this. He called me. That's crazy. We became really good friends. But he told me about something. He said, Heil, you need to know about the early telephone system. And why would I want to do that? He said, because it will help you with how you adjust your systems. Because the early telephone systems did not work well. Well, what was wrong with them? They were mushy. They had no clear speech articulation. What were they going to do? I can give you a little sample of this. As you're hearing me right now, everything sounds very good. All of the S's, the P's, all of that speech articulation is there. I'm going to reach over here and turn down one thing. This has a parametric equalizer in it. And I'm going to remove 2.5K. Now put that in your head. You're going to use it a lot here in the next hour. 2.5K. Here it goes. You probably can understand it, but not as well. The F and the S, the essence of sound, the speech articulation is gone. Why? Because I took a slice out of the whole spectrum. I'm going to put it back in. And when I do, wow, speech articulation comes alive. Now the F and the S, there's essence of sound, simply stunning. And it's all because of one thing. Well, there's a few things around it, but 2.5K is so important. But what was that? What was the telephone system going to do? There were no equalizers. They had no equalization. So they got busy with the engineers, 4,000 of them. That's who had been working at Bell in those days. They did a ton of things. You need to do a study on the Bell Lab guys. I was very fortunate because when Paul came to me, took me under his wing, he gave me this little book and he said, "This is your Bible." I said, "Really?" Okay. Well, it was all 800 pages of it. You want to know anything about audio? There it is. I still refer to it. And so what were you going to do? I mean, I didn't have Google. It was the audio encyclopedia. You guys and gals, you just punch up Google and you can find out about these things. And I do hope you do. The telephone engineers, Bell Lab scientists, they were incredible. But they set out to put 2 wires from New Jersey out to California. And every 500 miles, they had a relay station. They wanted to keep it up. They wanted to keep that voltage up, the current up, and the frequency response. And they did. But you heard what happened when they got to the other end. What was wrong? These guys were really going crazy. Well, the two lead scientists, and I do hope you know who these guys are, Dr. Harvey Fletcher and Dr. Weldon Munson. They started doing a study on what? The human ear. And they came up with what is known in history as the Fletcher Munson curve. And gosh, I hope you guys and gals know about this. You see, our ears do not hear flat. And the louder it is, the flatter it gets. That's why kids like to listen to their music loud. Look up there at 100, 110 dB, it's almost flat. But down here where you're listening, at 20, 30 dB level, wait a minute. And what they discovered, and if you take anything away from tonight, this is what you want to take. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this in the next hour. Look at that. First of all, it's only 3K wide. 3K wide. Kind of sounds like something you talk into every night, doesn't it? But unfortunately, many do not have that. And so we'll come back to that. Now that the scientists discovered that they needed to do some kind of rise at 2.5 because of Fletcher Munson's experiments, what are they going to do? How are they going to do that? Well, they did it with resistors and capacitors. They're merely just high-pass filters. There's a great view of a high-pass filter. It's a capacitor straight through that carries all of the audio response. Depending on the size of the capacitor, you can slow that down by smaller capacitors. But use a big one and it all goes through. You have any bass you want to get rid of? Take it to ground. There's all kinds of equations that you can work this on. The low pass filter is reverse of that. All the full range comes into the resistor. And you want to get rid of highs, you take them to ground with a capacitor. But that one to the left, that high pass filter, that was it. We didn't have equalization. No. It's really hard for a lot of guys and gals to think about that because, my gosh, everything today's got an equalizer in it. But this is way, way away from this. Young man, John Volkman, look how young he was. He was working for RCA, and his job was to go into motion pictures theaters and fix their playback system because, in 1930, there were no more silence. It all had audio with it, and it was pretty mushy. And so little John did this. He made a little box and he put 3 low pass, 3 high pass or so, and he'd insert it from the program source, which was a film projector, into the audio amp input. And he could switch it around, and when he'd find one that worked, he'd take those components and solder them in place. Wow. You see, this is difficult to understand and realize and believe. From 1920s through to 1967, we were pretty much void of serious equalization. It wasn't here. It came up a little bit, 1948, 52, right in there when hi-fi came in. I know I was a young teenage kid. I had one of the first hi-fi systems. I had a bass and treble control, but it wasn't very active, as you heard a minute ago. Couldn't do anything like that, but you could get a little bit more treble and roll off a little bass. And that's all we lived with. We were happy until 1967. I heard about this, and so I went charging out to California. Langevin, they produced a lot of mixers and compressors and limiters for motion pictures, theaters, and recording studios, of course. And so I go out there, and here it was. I mean, this is just absolutely amazing. You could change the frequency up at the top with the knobs, but then you could slide it up and down. You could boost it or cut it. And this was totally amazing. But they also made other things. And what was incredible is I hit them right at the right time when they were doing this. They took me around the corner of another room and they were building a mixer. And wow, because we were just using line mixers and doing all these great acts there in the beginning. This is what we had. That's what anybody had. Really, those are from the broadcast world, in that they were line mixers and they were just 4 or 5 or 6 channels. There was no equalization. There was no monitors or none of that. It was crazy. So I bought 2 of those. But before I left, they said, here's something that we're just introducing. Maybe you would like it too. Oh, that doesn't mean much to you now, but let me tell you something. In 1968, this was unbelievable. Holy smokes, a graphic equalizer. You could draw your own graph. How cool was that? Look where I set it. Of course I did. 2.4 was the rise. I had just a little bit of bass, not a lot, and it worked great. So I bought a pair of those mixers. I had a carpenter in my hometown of Marissa, Illinois, build me this cabinet. We had their compressor limiter, 2 mixers that made 16 channels, and of course, the wonderful equalizer. So Heil sound was really, we were really the top of the knock when all this was going on. But I'd got tired. I'd been on the road for many years with these guys and gals. Had a good time, but punk rock came in. A lot of the rock festivals, we did several rock festivals, and they were all muddy messes. And so I thought maybe it'd be time to move on. Well, I hadn't been on the air in a long time. So I come back home after 12 years. I turned on my KWM2 and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because when I left, the audio was really wonderful. Yeah, it was only 2.1 wide, but it was clean and articulate. What was I hearing when I turned these things on? This is what I heard. CQ field day, CQ field day. What happened to my great Art Collins audio? Huh? Some of them had it right.
Whiskey 0, Oscar Juliet Yankee.
So I knew that there was hope, that some of the guys had it right. But man, I had to listen to this for a while, and I said,
Copy 3 Alpha.
I said, no, we're not going to accept this. If I'm going to get back on the air, I got to do something. And there again, I was just talking to myself. I didn't know that there was a great wall in front of me that I was going to climb. I borrowed some ideas from young John Volkman. You remember John Volkman, right? I borrowed some things from John. What were those things? Equalization. Because by 1972, things were looking pretty good equalization-wise. And so I built the EQ 200, I called it. It was a 2-band equalizer. The low filter was at 160. You can plus or minus that 12 dB, cut or boost. What is the high filter? If you don't know, I really have failed so far. I told you we're gonna talk more and more about this. It's 2.5K. And so you're gonna boost that. You're gonna roll off the bass. It just gives such life to transmitters. Transmitters I'd never heard of before. Kenwood, Yaesu, Icon. What are you talking about? Well, yeah, they didn't mention microphone. Really? Well, they don't sound good. Well, they came in a box and they're really good. Says who? Well, they gave it to me. Yeah. Okay. I had a lot. I had a lot to do because equalization had not arrived. So I wrote an article and I sent it to QST, July 1982. They called me back and they said, "This is a revelation. In our studies, we have never seen anything about audio equalization into ham radio. This is a fascinating article. These are their words. We will make it the lead article and it will get the cover award for July of 1982. So things started progressing pretty quick. I made one mistake. The article had great diagrams, had all the parts and how layout, so on, but I put my phone number in there. And I started getting phone calls, not from one or two, but hundreds. They didn't want to build it. They wanted it right now. Well, I had closed that plant 2 years earlier. So I called back two of my best solder gals and we started building EQ200s, lots of them. And so things got really good. And it came to the point where ICOM called me one day and said, "Watch for a letter from Dr. Inouye." That's Inouye Communications, the founder. And he said, in his letter he sent to me, he had a picture of his IC781. That was a great transceiver, one of the better that they built in those days. A lot of DXers and net controls, and everybody used them. He said in his letter, with a picture of my gold line microphone, that freaked me out. A gold line microphone on my boom. I was the one that brought booms to this industry because whenever you hear me on the air, I'm always doing something. I'm always soldering. I got workbenches that roll out from under here and so on. And I can't hold the microphone, had desk stand. So I brought booms to this industry in 82. But he had a picture of all that. He said, "I'm thinking of new radio. I want to know if we can use EQ200 in this new radio line." And so it is. History will remain. From the Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 3, all the way through their line. Every one of them, including, I didn't get it down. Including this little baby. If you don't have one of these, you want to get it. This is wonderful, the little 705. The 705 is a 7300. And it's in a little bitty box. And all of this stuff allows you to have equalization, all of the necessary things that you really need. It even has DStar and 2 meters on it. It's got more stuff in it than the 7300. And the 7300 is a marvelous piece. It really is. But they all have my EQ200 in them. But there was a problem once it got out there. And the problem was that guys never heard of equalization in ham radio. They didn't know what was going on. So they just left it a default. They'd get on in the morning with their group. "Oh, Joe said you sound just fine." Well, no, you don't sound just fine. They're just used to hearing you all the time. And so I had to start doing a website and how to do this. And here's how easy it is. What is the very first thing you do when you sit down at a radio? I know you're going to tell me turn it on. No, seriously, what's the first thing? You have to set the transmitter bandwidth, TBW. That's so important. the transmitter bandwidth. Please set it at 100 on the low end and 2900 on the top end, as you'll see on your screen. TBW, that's the wide mode. They also have a mid and a narrow mode if you're doing DX work. We'll get into that in a minute. But you go up to the, after you set the bandwidth, you go up to the EQ and you lower the bass a little bit. We want to get rid of it. And you're going to say, well, yeah, this bass is good, isn't it? No, that bass is horrible because the bass covers up everything. And it just erases all of the beautiful articulation you had. Let's get rid of that. I didn't turn it off. You don't just turn them all the way off. You balance it up, but listen how pretty my articulation is now. So you lower the bass a few dB and you increase that treble because it's a 2.5. And all of the rigs, all the ICOMs have all the stuff in them, just different. There you can see on the 7610, you can see that the 3 bandwidths to choose from and so on. And there was 7851. A lot of the Pro series had this looking screen. And there again, you set the bandwidth and then minus and plus and so on. They also asked me while we were talking to build them a microphone because these companies do not build their own microphones. They OEM it from somewhere. And, well, yeah, but Heil came in the box and it's got their name on it. That's easy to do, but it's not right. When you compare those freebies that you got with something designed for that line of radios, we have a whole different ball game. And the ICM doesn't work on anything but ICOM, but man, does it work. And it works really good. Well, what about Yaesu? Well, that was an interesting thing. About a year, or I think maybe 2 years after that Dayton experience, or after they let her, I had a Dayton experience. Dr. Hasagawa, who is one of the family members that own Yaesu, he came in on my booth, much taller than I. I'm going to talk to you. Wait a minute. Well, I'm going to talk to you about that EQ. Well, let's step out of the booth here. And we got to talking about how to make it better. Well, the only way you can make a shelving EQ like that better is by a parametric. Yeah, that'd be good. Now, wait a minute. What'd be the problem? Education. You see, with that 2-band equalizer, I figured out where the low frequency was, 160. I figured out where the treble would be, 2.5K. And all you as the engineer to your station had to do was decrease or increase those. But with a parametric, it's a totally different thing. Parametric EQ is really cool. I'll show you. This is a broadcast parametric. Just about every broadcast station in the world uses Symmetrics 528E. I have one right over there in all of my gear. Has a mic preamp in it, left to right. That first knob is a mic preamp. Then it's compression. How much compression? It has limiter. How much limiting? You can adjust all that. It has a de-esser. A lot of radio, TV hosts, they have a more excitation on the real high S's. And I don't happen to hear them. They almost whistle. And so the de-esser will cut that out, take care of it. It's gone. But then that bottom picture is the rest of that. It's a 3-band equalizer. And this one I have, this one I took off from my radios. This is on my AM gear over there. I set the first frequency at 100, around 100, 120. Then I set it at 2 octaves. We'll get into that. That's the transmitter bandwidth of that audio filter. Not the RF filter, the audio filter. And I notch it because I want to roll off that 100 hertz. What's the next one? 2.5K. And we're 3 octaves wide and +8. and the other one's at 6K, a couple of octaves wide, and just a couple of dB. And so the parametric allows you to just formulate anything you wanted. But you don't need to get crazy about it. So I told Dr. Hasagawa this was what I wanted to do. Every Yaesu has 3 parametric filters, and they're all the same. Listen up here. From the 9,000 back around 2000, 2001, from the FT 9000 all the way to the new 101, they have my same parametric equalizer. That's where people get confused because they do a silly thing. You will notice in this picture of the screen of one of the Yaesus, I've fuzzed out all of that stuff on the left side that has no meaning to you. What that is assignment numbers, 201, 202, 203, so on. Another Yaesu would have 301, 302. Another one would have 401, 402. We don't care about that. What we care about, that there's 3 filters. Now, you ready for this? There are not just 2 controls, there's 9. 9, and you have to figure out where they are. Can you believe this? You have to figure out where the 9 are. Wow. So let's dig into it because it is pretty simple once you see it. The first filter, and there's 3 things to adjust on it. You have to adjust the frequency, the level, and the width. So we're going to set it at 200. We're going to adjust the level at -2 or 3. And then we're going to do the bandwidth, the audio bandwidth at 2 octaves. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That's how wide that filter is covering. The next one's at 900. How did I choose that? See, that's the problem. Guys don't know what frequency to really set these things, so they just forget it. No, you have the greatest tool in amateur radio sitting in front of you. Do not default that. Now, why do I pick 900? There's something between about 600 and 900. It's a boxy sound. And you do this with your ears, and you'll hear as you talk. You want to get rid of that boxy sound. And so we're going to set that at, anywhere like 700 or 800, 900. And you're going to minus 3 dB or 4. And we're going to be at 2 octaves. What about the third one? You know where it's going. 2.5 at +8. And again, it's going to have 2 octaves of bandwidth. You see, parametric filters are so cool. You can move them around in frequency on the center line. Then you can boost or cut that once you stop on it. And those red lines are the bandwidth. You can make it real narrow, or you can make it wider to almost touch the next one. So I just use it at 2 octaves. Those are, in the audio world, octaves. If you play piano or anything with keyboards, you know what an octave is. Well, this really works great. And it's a wonderful thing for amateur radio. Here's another look at the bandwidth. The narrow bandwidth would be the blue line. A little wider would be the green, and then the red line. And this is just a wonderful thing. You can go on our website and you'll find this and other things. You go into the support page on the HAMRadio side. There are 2 websites. When you go to heilsound.com, you have the pro side, but we're going to go to the HAMRadio side. There's a place to click that. And this will give you hundreds of pages. But then you go to support and you will find the DSP settings. There's probably 60, 70 pages there. things like this, things like what we've been talking about, they're all there telling you how to do this. But there's also Kenwood. They came to me when they were designing their 990. And at the time, they wanted to do it better. I don't want to do that parametric thing. Okay, well, let's do like six octaves. Okay. Well, after a couple of years of fighting with it, this is what they did. Stupidly. 13 bands? Are you kidding me? And that came from their page. That's what they tell you to set it. Look at it. Real heavy on the bass. Dropped up here at 243. What is wrong with you people? This is what it should be. And this is just minor. I haven't done a really exciting equalizer, but it sure helps. If you have an older radio and that doesn't have EQ, you can go to W2IHY. He has a great little 8-band parametric. That's what Kenwood should have really did. That's what I tried to guide them to, but no, they had to do something stupid. And the settings are just like we talked about. You rise at 2.5, nothing exorbitant around 600 or 800, and then you lower that low end. The proper settings are for rag chew. You want to look at just what we were doing. But for DX work, you're going to roll off all the bass and really scream the highs. But how do you set mic gain? I'm on the air a lot, and I hear these guys, they'll get on in the morning. Hey, Bill, how's my mic gain sound? Well, I think it should be louder. Harvey came and said, no, I think it needs to be lower. And so you're just, you are the engineer. You have a license to do this. You, not Bill, Joe, me, or anybody else. It's you. You have to learn how to set your radio. Didn't you get a license? Didn't you read all the manuals? Do it. Well, how do you set mic gain? You don't do it by asking somebody, because I'll tell you a little secret. You probably already know this. If you call Bill in the morning and you guys all set up, yeah, but okay, that's good. Don't turn it up or down. You come here the next day and Bill's going, oh, yeah, that's no good. You better turn it down. The next day, you better turn it. You see? No. Do I call KMOX across the river, CBS, and tell them, hey, I think you got too many highs, or you ain't on enough high, or you need more. You think I do that? No, they have an engineer, and he sets the parametric equalizer you saw. He sets that, and they don't change it. Act of God will not change it because they are paid, and so are you. You want to adjust it right. Well, how do you adjust mic gain? Real simple. That's what the ALC meter is about. And when I did the 9000, if any of you have it, and Yaesu 9000, you're my hero. It is the best transceiver ever. Why? First of all, I took the silly 8-pin CB connector out, unbalanced audio. I put in what? I put in an XLR, a broadcast connector, so that you want to use cables and microphones that are balanced. That's very important. It solves so many RFI and noise problems. I took off the ALC meter. It's not there. Are you crazy, Heil? No. I put a meter on there and I call it microphone gain. That's what it is. And so when you want to adjust your mic gain, watch the ALC meter, and you just want to see it bounce. You don't want to see it in the red all the time. And when you do that, everything will be good. But you have to think about setting these things before you get on the air. Set all of the gains. And one exception. Boy, I get called down for this one. No, zero, nada compression. do not use compression. Are you silly, Heil? No. I have an open platform in all my years. If anybody can come to me and prove to me that it's compression that makes it over proper equalization and proper microphone, come to me, because you can't. I've already done all this. And so we want to be really clean, clear, no distortion. That's what compressors do. So get rid of it. And that really makes a big deal. Just keep in mind, you want to listen. You want to listen to your signal. In another receiver is how I do it. You can do it by listening to the monitor, but not all monitors are great. And then you want to adjust things like the AVC, automatic volume control, right? Well, most people don't pay attention to that. And how do you set your RF gain? How do you set your RF gain? Most people, they just turn it on wide open. Really? Huh. Why do you do that? Watch and listen. Remember this. Listen. What happens when we reduce the RF gain and we slow down the AVC, not fast, so it won't pump. And I don't turn off a noise limiter, turn on a noise limiter. The noise goes away because I lowered the gain. Here we go. This is a fascinating part of tonight. Listen to all that noise. It went away. But his signal didn't go down.
That's pretty much a turn on limited too. How it used to be on packets. Yeah, but
now we're going to bring that slow back to fast. Increase the gain, and it pumps like crazy.
The computers don't like we used to.
It's a very simple thing. You're not going to lose signal by lowering the RF gain. Now, you're not going to shut it all the way off, but determined by the signal you're listening to, you take that RF gain down. None of my receivers ever are wide open because it brings up noise that I don't want. And it's really sad that we don't hear more about this. And here's another great example of that. And I hope you get some. Come on, you got the wrong one. That's no good. This one's even better. This is great stuff.
Right now is really old technology that just kind of got forgotten.
A lot of pumping.
Anybody like Bob or anybody else would
got rid of it.
Say, I wonder about this old
look at that
stuff we
forget about the S meter. You didn't hear anything lost when you took that RF gain down. But now it sounds like he's on FM.
I love the technical abilities that
not anymore.
It's a hobby.
And that's the thing that really bugs me, because there's so much out there, and I don't understand why we don't hear much about it. Let me do that again for you. This is very important.
New right now is really old technology that just kind of got forgotten, and somebody like Bob or
slow it down.
anybody else would
sounds like FM. And there you are, lowering that gain. We didn't lose any signal strength. Oh, the meter might went down. Who cares?
And it works great, so.
Now you're going to bring them back up.
Very good. I love the technical
I'm going to bring it up fast.
abilities that
The default mode.
The technician class was truly a technician class test.
Kind of sickening that you don't hear more about it. And that is the default mode. Oh, I just love bringing all this good stuff to you because I know it's going to help your signals receiving and transmitting. We also make elements for different things. In 1983, I came up with the DX Contest Dream Machine, the HC4. Look at it. Look at the diagram. Nothing under 500 hertz and 10 dB at 2.5K. So where is your signal going to be? See, that's what you have to think about. And a lot of people, they don't get the ability to hear any of this stuff. If this balloon, I know you're probably laughing, but you're not going to laugh when I finish. If RF was air in this balloon, what we do, we set it out to 2,900, 100 on the low end, and we opened up a little bit of 2.4, 2.5, right? Well, what happens if you're going to the contest mode and you roll it off at 500 on the bottom end and 2,400 on the top? What do you do? Well, you have only one gate open. So we're going to, instead of having all of this nice and smooth and so on, you're going to cause that RF to be narrow, and it's going to look for an output, which is what? The only gate you have open, 2.4, 2.5. Yes, and it sounds terrible. I know it does. DXers, you hear us and you just want to cringe. Well, not if you're trying to get that last little bit of country. And it really is confusing to me. The DX guys know it. They get it. But other people that downplay it, they don't understand why we sound like that. Because our signal is so pointed with 2.5. And you heard several times tonight how important that is. The other thing you need to do is you need a scope. Everybody needs an oscilloscope to find out if you're flat topping and all kinds of things. You go to a ham fest, you can buy these things now for 30, 40, 50 bucks. These are $1,000 things. You don't care if it's only 10 megs wide or 30 megs. No, yeah, if you want to get a 200 meg, that's a little different, but you don't need it. How do you hook it up, Heil? How do you do that? There's no coax connector on the front of this thing. Well, you have to build something. I love it when we build. Go to Antique Electric Supply. Write that down, please. It's in a marvelous place. They have all kinds of stuff. A lot of old stuff. They're new, but things you only saw years ago. You buy that little box. You put 2 coax connectors on it. You take a center out of a piece of RG8 and go from one to the other, just straight through. Then on the input connector, you build a voltage divider. You can see it in that top. It's 51K to 680. And then at the junction of that voltage divider, you do a 0.04 over to the RCA jack, which is what you'll plug into the scope. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful when you can do these things. The other thing is so important. You need to know how to talk in a microphone. Heil, what is wrong with you? Well, I hear some of you, and I just want to sometimes break in and help you because you should never, ever get more than 2 inches from a microphone. Where did I learn this? Audio Encyclopedia. Yes. Every time you double the distance, watch and listen to this. Every time you double this distance, you lose 3 dB. So every time you back up, you could be losing enough that it would be over a kilowatt. Whoa, Heil, you're stupid. You just turn up the gain. Well, no, then you sound like you're in a roller rink. You don't want to do that. You do not want to do that. Learn to work the microphone, no more than a couple of inches. That's what the booms are for. They can bring it right to you. I was a really good friend of Joe Walsh's. Well, I still am, but we started back in the '68 with the James Gang. And it was about 2006. We had a home out there for a few years to help him. And he wanted me to build him a better microphone. And I said, what's the problem with the microphone you have? I'm going to unplug this. Well, he said, we have to, what happened to my audio? I didn't touch anything. I only changed microphones. Isn't that funny? He said, I have to sit right here. All of us do. And you know that. You have to be right here. You cannot move, because if you move, it doesn't hear you. So that's why you see all of the entertainers with this thing stuck in their throat. Joe wanted things that he didn't stick in the throat. I'm going to unplug this cable. Let me show you. I know a lot of people think I play games with this one. I don't. I'm unplugging this. And we're going to plug this in. Listen what happened. It is totally amazing what you can do with microphones. And until we came on the scene, HAMRadio didn't care. Oh, here's my matching microphone. Yeah, right. You heard the difference. And so now you can move around a full 180 degrees and it doesn't go away. That's marvelous. Well, the people that use these really love them. That's because what I learned from the scientists is a thing about power focus. And we also want to do things of omnidirection, only on the front, not on the back. We want to be able to remove everything coming from the back, all the noise and stuff. I'm going to do the change mics again. I better show you that I'm doing it and not playing games. This is the great PR40, and I got to watch it because this thing has a lot of output, a lot of bass, and I got most of it notched. But Joe wanted me to build a microphone that he didn't hear all the things behind him. In other words, rear rejection. Because all of these other microphones, I don't care if it's RE20s, I don't care if it's Shure, I don't care if it's a Neumann, I don't care what it is. They all have a problem. They pick up the rear. This one is unlike any other microphone ever. What I did, first of all, it's the largest diaphragm of any. It's 1 3/8. RE20s, all the other microphones, they're like 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches. That's it. This thing's big. It's the largest dynamic microphone. And I did that because of the transient response and all of the articulation we can get from some of these. But what about that rear? Watch this screen, because this is a phenomenon only to the PR40. Here we go. When I talk in the back of it, it's 40 dB down. It's still working, but it's 40 down. They love it. The broadcasters love it. The recording studios love it because it gets rid of a lot of noise that's they don't want. And how I did it was very simple. I opened the whole bottom of the element. And that was the key to it, because everything else out there, they only have little holes, like 4 of them. 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, little 1/8 inch hole. That's not enough. You guys are the $1 million engineers. I'm just a crazy little hand that listens a lot and learns a lot from some of the dynamic people in the audio world. And so the PR40 it's really amazing. The microphone I've been using here before, is a baby of that. The PR40 gets down to 28 hertz. Again, no other microphone gets down that low. So for ham radio, it gets pretty furious, and it's hard to tame all that low end. And we're only 3K wide. So I built the 781, and it's wonderful. I brought that out with the ASU because Dr. Hasakawa wanted. Let me go back. And it's just so great. It's become the podcaster's best friend, and a lot of broadcasters are using it too. And of course, I'm sure you're all aware of our headsets. We've been the leader for 37 years or more, and now the Pro 7 is really outrageous. It's so good, and the contesters and the DXers, they love all of this because it makes their signal better, and especially the headphones. I used a couple of things in building the headphone. First of all, I got word over the years from contesters and serious operators, maybe one of you. They wanted a balance control because a lot of people are hard of hearing one side or the other. So you can balance that right here. The speakers in here are very exceptional. And even though this thing looks heavy, it's not. It's very comfortable because of the ear pads. And the speakers are about a good 3/4 to an inch from your ear, and it gives time to breathe. It's really, really nice. The speakers sound great. And there's this. I put a separate jack, output jack, so your logger can plug into there. You don't need a Y cord and all that messing around. Just plug him right in there. Great for field day and let people hear what you're doing, but especially for when you have a logger. But then the biggie, we're the only company for the past, I don't know what, I should look it up, 13, 14 years, that has phase reversal. What are you talking about, Heil? What are you talking about? Well, if you hear a weak signal, and he's way back in a pile up, if you reverse the speakers on my headphone, he moves up front. You can move signals around in your head with phase reversal. It's the most amazing thing ever. And phasing has a lot to do with everything in ham radio. How did Wes Shum, when he built the first sideband transmitter in 1948, how did Wes get rid of the carrier in that AM signal? Then how did he get rid of the other sideband? It's all because of phasing. Some idiot piles on your frequency and you hit the notch filter and he's gone. How's that work? It takes his signal out of phase. He's gone. How does a Yagi antenna work? The back element is out of phase. The front element is in phase. All these many, many things. Two signals out of phase, they cancel. They cancel. And it is so rewarding to have guys tell me about some of the things that they do because of some of this. And it's not me, it's the science of it. I have a great demonstration here. I'm going to unplug this microphone. I built a Y cord, no, nothing fancy here, a Y cord so that we can get two microphones into one input. This is one of them. It's our PR22 that I built for Paul Rogers of Bad Company some years ago. He wanted a microphone that was very articulate. And so we did. It's one of my favorite hand microphones. I use it a lot, different setups here. Now, here we go. Watch the screen because this is audio 106. These two microphones are in phase. So when I bring them together, we will have a rise of what? How many? 3 decibel, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. 1, Watch and listen. 1, 2, 3. What? You didn't hear that, did you? I'm going to take 3 away. Watch and listen now. You know, this is how important listening is. 1, 2, 3. What's the deal? The deal is you're running 600 watts and you don't have the right microphone. You don't have your right equalization. And so you're going to go by kilowatt. How many dB are you going to rise? 3. Well, it's not worth it, is it? No. Oh, but oh man, I got a kilowatt. I'm really, yeah, you sure. It just makes you happier to look over and see that $2,000 you spent. Let me tell you what to do with that $2,000. Now listen to me. You take that $2,000 and you give it to your wife so she can buy a bunch of purses and shoes. That will get you a lot. I mean, a whole lot. Doubling your power doesn't get you anything. This is the biggie. I built this little plug. This little plug, pin 2 is hooked to 3 and 3 is hooked to 2. This microphone is out of phase. When I speak in it, the diaphragm's coming up. When I speak to this one in phase, it goes down. What happens when I do these 2 microphones together? They cancel. Watch and listen. 1, 2. They cancel. You can't hear me because they're canceling. Now you can understand how many things in this hobby works. Signals that are out of phase. Wow. I always wanted to build a phased array because I'd heard all the big contesters and people had them. Well, a few years back, we had a place down in the Ozark for 8 years and let's do this. So I went to the telephone co-op and I got 2 telephone poles. You know, you can go to those guys and they'll give them to you. They'll have like a 90-foot pole that gets rotted off and they got it all laying on their back lot. It's only about 60 or 70, but what do we care? So I have 2 poles. I put them up 75 meters. They're 64 foot apart and they're 64 foot high. Absolutely tuned dipoles. There is nothing that I want to talk about. I want you to ever tell me that is not resonant. I don't want off-center junk that you got to have a bunch of tuner. No, you want the antenna to be resonant. It solves so many problems. Because if it's not resonant, you know what happens to half of the audio or half of the RF? You know, it comes back down to coax. And now you want to talk about your RFI? Huh? Oh, it bugs me to hear these guys and some of these stupid antennas that they paid a lot of money for. You build you a coaxial dipole, the MIT version, you will never have anything coming back on the coax. Now look at this again. Here we go. These 2 feed lines are exactly alike, 126 feet, put into some coax T's. And then there's 43 foot, that red line, of delay line. The remote switch, this thing was 500 feet from this shack. The remote switch will switch to the left. That's the driven element then. And the rear element is delayed by 43 foot. And it is out of phase. And I built this so I could work my guys on the West Coast. And it was wonderful. If I wanted to work the guys on the East Coast, bingo. I had it facing east and west, by the way. It really worked. You want to hear it? Check this out. Hard to believe, but it's true.
Installation of a 75-meter phased array antenna system consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG-213. In order to make the antennas directly from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43 foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried, and just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. Take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after you done mow it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm gonna have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it, because if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it's looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
the system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
Yeah, well, I see they introduced boy on it, and their form of portable. So what that is, your wife.
Yes, I've said it several times. There is nothing like a resonant dipole. And I have a whole many hours we could get into with antennas. I love antennas, but resonant dipoles is where it's at. And one of the other things is about the feed line. When I first got into this hobby, I was a young kid of 15 years old. And I met up with this guy on 6 meters. He was on a single sideband on 6 meters in 1956. That wasn't heard of. It wasn't on 20 meters very much. Well, I started talking to him and found out he was a chief engineer at KMOX CBS in St. Louis across the river. And I was in those days playing the organ at the Fox, and we'd play for 8 minutes, and then we'd have a couple of hours that we had to wait till the movies were over, and then I'd come back up out of the pit and so on. He said, come visit me. And so I rolled up in front of his building, the address, and it was KMOX. I about fell out of my car because I was only 15. I also had a driver's license from the state of Illinois that I could drive to work. That was cool. Anyway, I took a piece of coax to him on one of my other visits, and I showed him, you solder through the holes like the handbook shows you. Oh, he come unglued. He said, you can't do that. I said, well, that's what the handbook show you. I don't care. He said, you cannot guarantee me that all of those little wires on that shield are soldered. This is how you do it. And so all of my coaxes from there out to this year have been like this. But I don't show very many people these. I tape them up so you can't see them. Until about 6 years ago, I visited K3LR. Familiar? Tim Duffy from DX Engineering. He's got a couple $1 million contest station. I mean, he wins all these contests. He has the greatest operators and all that. Well, I look over in the corner and here's this bundle, probably 80, 90. Guess what? They were all soldered like this. And then I told him, I said, I'm so happy to see this. And I told him why. He said, no, you can't solder through those holes. You'll melt the center conductor and everything else. And so he then, the other day, sent me this. It's a DX Engineering gadget. What is that? Interesting, and it's purple. You take a piece of coax, RG8, RG13, cut it off clean. You put it in there and twist it. And then you put the other end in here, and it will trim just exactly what you need to fit on a connector and do the right way. So these are all fun things, but they mean a lot when you're really trying to make it happen. I also, how do you get coax into your shack? Through the window. You put down a toilet flange, just like you're going to set a toilet. And then you lay the tile down and bingo, what do you got? It's great. And so those are all things that I find them very helpful, and I try to help a lot of people. We'll come back here some night and we'll get into the pine board. It is something. It was a cover award in 2019. We had over 1,000 people on the show, Ham Nation, when I was there for almost 10 years. The last 2 years, we would build each piece of it. We'd build the mic preamplifier and we'd have 15 minutes each show. And then we built the final amplifier and so on. It was a wonderful experience, and I'm still building. Oh, yeah. A lot of people are building them really in chassis and all that, always respecting high voltage. But last on the agenda is this one. There is an AM window, and a lot of young people, and I'm talking about people that have only been licensed the last 20 years. I've been licensed 65. They don't know about this. So they just take their sideband VFO and just move wherever they want. No. When AM was king back in the 50s and sideband started moving in the late 50s, there were wars. I'm telling you. I know one instance where a guy from Paducah took his shotgun and visited another guy in Tennessee to tell him, you stay off of our frequency. Well, there wasn't any kind of thing. So they, and along with other guys, sat down at a gentleman's agreement. It was a gentleman's agreement. And this is what they came up with. 3880 to 3890. That's only reserved for AM. 7290 to 7295. Only AM. 14286 and so on. The biggie is that 75 meter one. You see, AM operators are crystal controlled. So we can't move. Sideband can go anywhere. And so you have to be respecting that and be a gentleman about it. And in closing, one of the other things that really bugged me over the years is these manufacturers come up with their speakers. You got to be kidding me. They're little 3 and 4 and 5 inch pieces of crap. They're just terrible. They put them in a steel box and sell them to us for 150, 200 bucks. I said, time out. So what I did, I borrowed some knowledge from my great mentor, Paul Klipsch. First of all, I took that speaker, look at that speaker, the magnet's huge on it. I took that speaker outside in free air, found out what the cone resonant was, and then you treat the inside of the cabinet to meet that. So there's no phase distortion. There's no distortion. And I'm using balance line inputs, 600 ohm in, that come from the preamp. And that looks like this. It's a very, very interesting little piece. The situation with that is that it's much more than just the equalizer. That little guy is doing things for your earphones. And let's get it set up for you. Okay, come on here, get in focus. we have 2 headphone amplifiers. Those aren't just Y chords like you see in some of this stuff. They're actually line amps. Put the logger here, you put the operator there. Bingo. This one is record out. So you take the output, adjust it, put it in your computer, and make really nice recordings. But here's the big deal. You also can take your left speaker here and your right speaker here of your headphone. So if you have a hearing imbalance, you can make that work for you. Now, here comes the biggie. There are 3 filters in here. I started the first one at 6K, and it's plus or minus about 12 dB. Then we have a low at 160 hertz. We can notch that or boost it. We certainly don't want to boost it, but the middle one is the precious one. That middle one is a parametric. We can move from 800 to 4,000. I have some really nice audio of this that I took off air. And there we go.
Echo India is Bravo, Lima Bravo.
That's the way you hear him. Here comes. This is the way you hear him. It's flat. Here comes 2.5.
Echo India is Bravo, Lima Bravo. BI ATLB calling invite.
Here are a couple of usual single sideband signals that are mushy and bassy, difficult to understand. You can add some speech articulation just by adding some 2.5 mid-range.
Again, we're flat.
You know, a sideband, but they're just not, it's not the same as a rig built, you know, just for 2-meter sideband. You know, the receivers will never compare. So it's kind of nice that, again, ICOM technology.
It's just one of the best things that I think I've ever done because it's helping so many people. I can't tell you how many emails and calls I get. And it's a product that should have been here long before. There's some people trying to do similar things, but no, we don't want to be similar. It's got to be that. Most all the stuff that we talked about tonight's in this handbook. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And that's available from any of the dealers, or if you call our place and buy it through the web store, I'll sign it for you. And some years back, about 8 years back, I was very honored. Heil Sound is the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All the gear you see me in front of it was done for Pete Townsend and the Who. That's the only quadraphonic mixing board where we did quadrophenia in 4 corners of an arena for
Wow.
a couple of years. That tour was. What's behind them is ZZ Top's board and the monitors. We were the first people to do monitors and the talk box for Joe Walsh and from Peter Frampton. And recently I received an honorary PhD from Missouri University for music and electronics. You're looking at a guy that barely made it through high school. I really didn't care about school. I had already had a career and was having a good time. But I learned so much, and it's all because of HAMRadio. But I thank you for your time. Are there any questions tonight? I sure hope there are some questions that I can help with.
All righty, guys, this is your opportunity. Take yourself off of mute, and if you've got any questions for Dr. Heil, now's the time.
Dr. Heil?
Yes.
This is Steve Hamilton, KK4YUG. The thing I was wondering, do you have on your website instructions of how to set up like my ICOM 7300s, like you were displaying earlier, the audio section of the 7300? Do you have instructions for all that kind of stuff on there?
Yeah.
Because I get lost in the books.
No, the book, all of these books, I work for these guys and I said, why don't you do a book that we can understand? Well, they're good. No, they're not. No, they're not. Even to me, they're very confusing. I mean, I designed the darn thing, but it's very simple, especially for ICOM. I mean, we went through it. It's very simple.
Right.
You set the bandwidth first, 100 to 2900, and then you go up and set the base -1 or 2, 3, and plus the treble at about +3. Listen a pair of headphones to the monitor, and that'll help you a whole lot. But that was very simple. That's all you need to do. No compression, none of that nonsense, and it'll sound beautiful. And if you have one of our ICM microphone, it'll sound even better. So that'll help you. And if you run into trouble there, no problem. K9EID at ARRL. You send me a note and I'll be with you either on the phone or Skype or whatever. Don't be shy. Send me an email. Let me know what you have to work about.
Okay, brother. I appreciate it.
Dr. Heil, we've got a question in the chat. Not sure if you're looking at the chat there in Zoom, but Mike Luckett has a question. Can you speak to what he was calling the upward spread of masking? And that's beyond me. I don't even know what that is.
Me too.
Mike, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, what are you talking about? We just came through 2 years of masking. I'm sorry, Mike. I don't know what you're talking about. Spread of masking in audio? Did I miss something in my 60 years of this?
We'll let him think about that, and maybe I'm not sure if he's got a microphone, so I'm not sure that he can actually speak it. But he's talking about where low frequencies mask higher frequencies.
Well, there's no one frequency that does it. If you have too many lows, it depends on where the frequency of the low equalizer is. That equalizer's at 80 hertz, and it pretty much covers up everything that's up there. So it all depends on the frequency of the base control filter. And just like I showed you, 80 hertz will pretty much cover everything up. And that kind of, I don't know why that frequency would be predominant. But anyway, I hope that helps you, Mike. If not, send me an email. We'll get on Skype and talk about it.
Yeah, I think one of the pictures you had up a little bit earlier really showed how you roll off, what is it, below 160 or something like that. And that way you don't get that muddy sound.
Exactly. Everything under 100 hertz. And it really bugs me when I hear some of these guys that are 4 and 5 kc wide, and they just muddle up everything they're doing. But they're cool because they sound like a DJ. We're not DJs. I'm sorry. We're communicators.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the gallery here tonight? Again, you can come off mute and ask your question, or you can put it down there in the chat window. While we're waiting on somebody else to come along, let me ask a question, Dr. Heil. One of the things that's interested me about the headsets, I wonder what your take is on, I know your headsets cover the ear, and that's really going to help to keep extraneous noise from getting in. Is there a line of your headsets, or do you have any position on noise canceling headsets for that sort of work?
No, I did some of that for a while, but I don't find them to be really useful. I really don't. The main thing is that they will fit your head right, and all of our headsets have a steel band in them, and to make them fit just right, don't be afraid to bend it. You're not going to break it. You see, there's stainless steel band in there, and you want to make it fit tight, and it will be fine. The new little headset, I never did much with handy talkies, but until recently, this is the headset for the 705. ICOM, when they brought the 705 out, says we need some help because they weren't going to do anything, and they didn't. And so we brought out the headset, and it's really inexpensive, and it fits many ICOM handy talkies. And so we went on, we got them for Kenwood, we got them for Yaesu, and they're really inexpensive. And then my fave small one is this one, the BM17. It's just marvelous. And again, it's like I showed you, you can adjust it, but has great speakers in it. And of course, you know, the microphone element is really good. So that's really good. But all of them, the Pro Set Elite, are really popular with a lot of them. That has a big ear pad, and it sounds so good. I got studios using some of those, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. We're talking about hot dog recording studios, and then this one was designed, the Pro Set 3. That's just a headphone. Many of the CW ops love it because it also has phase reversal, and they really like that. So if you have one of our headsets with phase reversal, you know what I'm talking about. And we're constantly moving and making things happen. Right now, I'm looking at doing a wireless headset. And this is the first time anybody's seen this outside of my shop. But this works great. And I know there's a lot of little cheapy headsets, but this one is not that. It's got incredible fidelity, and it works great. And it looks like we'll be doing one that you flip it one way, and the Bluetooth will talk to your iPhone, go the other way, and it goes into the box that's in the receiver of the transmitter. It works really good. I think we're going to do it. We've been working for about a year on it, so stand by. That might be in your shack before long.
Oh, I'm excited about that. Anything that's wireless like that. So many, well, the younger generation in particular, but even some of us guys, you know, we're running around with these AirPods and things like that in our ears without cables. And the wireless aspect of it will appeal to a great many of the younger folks.
Yeah. As I say, there's some of it out there, but when I listen to it, it's cheap. I can't live like that. I got to have a little bit of quality behind the build and beside the sound.
Understood. And my brother and I both have Pro 7s, and we love them. We tried to do a winter field day one year. This is about 3 years ago now. And we were in our emergency communications trailer, which is an aluminum trailer. And it started raining so hard, we couldn't make any contacts because we didn't have headsets on and it was too noisy. If we had had those Pro 7s sooner, we could have gone ahead and just done things the way we would have normally have done things. So I'm a big believer in headsets, and you can hear those weaker stations so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and all of them, as I've been saying, can adjust the headbands for them. That's always a good thing.
We've got a question in the chat. Maybe you want to just summarize. Tommy asked, did you do a summarization of the settings in the Yaesu? And you did that a little bit earlier. There were those 3 settings for each band, low, medium, and high. I think it was 200 frequency, -3 dB, 2 width, 900, -3 dB, and then 2.5 plus 8, I think were those settings.
All Yaesus have my same parametric equalizer. There it is. That's the starting point on all of them. Yes, I know the assignment numbers are different. And do not worry about the stuff in the red below, because if you use compression, you have to reset it for all that. Don't use compression. If you get the right microphone and you get the right setting that I'm showing you right here, beautiful. You get good articulation. That's what you need. And the right microphone that has a little rise in that 2.5 also. But all of the Yaesus are the same. The 991s, the 101s, 10s, all of them, 950s, all of that. They're the same equalizer. I did it for all of them. So go to our page under support and get the All Things Yaesu. A lot of information there.
Awesome. So much great information tonight, Dr. Heil. I just, sometimes you've just got to watch this over and over, and you're going to pick out things that you've mentioned tonight, whether it's no compression or settings or a good microphone or turn off compression. There's a lot of good stuff here. RF gain. I took notes, and I'm going to go back and go through some of these with my radios, and I know some of the guys probably will as well. Fellas, do you have any more questions as we probably cut it off here in the next couple of minutes? Any more questions at all? Mr. Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, pertaining to the equalizer settings on the parametric EQ and the Yaesus, in the menu it listed as Q for the bandwidth, and my understanding is that Q factors are the lower the number, the wider it is. Is that correct, or am I mistaken on that?
Yeah, they tell you in the book about that. You can. That's one thing in their manual they do help you with. Yeah, they do tell you a little bit about that one. And sometimes it's really hard to hear the difference, but listen, mentally dissect what you hear, and you'll be okay. You'll be okay.
I had another question too about the like the 7300. It's got equalization, I guess, settings for the receive also, not just the transmit. And it has the setting for a low pass and high pass filter. Can you speak on that a little bit, maybe?
Well, there again, depends on what you want to do with it. The low pass filter is going to pass more lows. The high pass is going to pass more highs. So it depends on how you want to listen to it. And the receive, they have equalization, but what are you going to get in? Are you going to listen in a junky little speaker? Oh, I have a matching ICOM speaker. Well, it's junky also. I work for them. Let me tell you, what you want to do is you want this guy. You want to make your receiver. I hope you heard that tonight. I mean, that is just an amazing difference when you can punch up that mid range, and it just, especially when you're doing a thing with DX work and in the noise stuff, it works great. But yeah, that the 7300 is a wonderful piece of gear. Have fun with it.
Two good questions. Thank you, Austin, for both of those. Anybody else? We're just about ready to pack it in. Any further questions for Dr. Heil tonight? He's been so gracious with his time.
Dr. Heil, this is KK4YUG again. I just want to thank you for your presentation. I have enjoyed it to the max. And I just want to put that in there because my battery is getting ready to take a flip out on me here. I've got less than about 9% or less. And I just wanted to put that out there. I've really enjoyed your presentation and
Thank you.
Keep it up. I really do. You fascinate me.
I appreciate that. Look forward to coming back. Now, let me tell you how I end all of these. Most of them want to do this. You got two things. You can reach down there and click the old goodbye and leave, or I'll walk over here about 20 feet and I'll fire up the theater organ for 2 minutes and let you have a little music. How you like that?
Oh, that would be great.
Okay.
Who else ends a presentation with a theater organ? That's got to be the most unique thing I've ever seen. Go ahead, Dr. Heil. It's been great having you, and we want to thank you so much at the bottom of my heart for the Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. It's been a wonderful evening. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I look forward to coming back, and greetings to all, and don't be shy. Send me email, give me a phone call, whatever. I'm always here for you.
Yeah,
Love
we're
HAMRadio.
Looking forward to having you back sometime. That was awesome. Thank you, Dr. Heil.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you.
Great job, buddy. Loved it.